Here's a theory that I have. Here's a theory. It's a crazy theory. We all have heard about the SPLC funding people working nefariously and, dare I say, even sabotaging quote unquote hate groups, white supremacist groups, and the other like. Now we heard of that. Now I shout out to a fantastic supporter of the channel who sent me an email and said, "Well, you do know that they had Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk on their list of quote unquote hate groups and such of that nature." I said, "I didn't know that." And they sent me the list and they sent me the article, but they also sent me Charlie Kirk's response to it. I'm going to listen to that and we're going to go over that together. But I thought it was interesting because the article that I'm looking at today, right? Turning Point USA, a case study of the hard right in 2024. Okay. Seems pretty interesting, but guess what? This came out in May, actually late May 2025. So is it possible, just is it possible that this may have fostered the radicalization of Tyler Robinson? That's my question. I have no reason to believe that it did, but I'm just asking a question. Several weeks after the 2024 presidential election, Charlie Kirk, founder and president of Turning Point USA, proudly embraced a white nationalist conspiracy theory while celebrating the then president-elect Donald Trump's plans to mass deportation. Kirk accused Democrats of embracing immigration as part of their plot to secure votes, permit crime, and enact a great replacement. Where's the lie? Where is the lie in that, though? Just because you say that that's not true, or you say it's a quote unquote conspiracy of a particular bad group, that doesn't mean that that's not true. He warned his the hundreds of thousands of listeners, we native born Americans are being replaced by foreigners. Now, he does say we native born Americans. I am a native born American, and there's many others that look like me and others that are native born Americans. So that statement, where's the lie in that? He then promised Trump will liberate the country from an enemy of occupation of foreign hordes. Okay. And what's the problem? I don't see where the problem is. Charlie Kirk's TPUSA is well funded, hard right organization with links to Southern poverty law centers, identified hard right extremists, and tremendous amounts of influence in the conservative politics. While the group was previously dismissed by key figures within the Republican National Committee, Trump attended several TPUSA events across the country throughout 2024, and several of his nominees have ties to the organization. Turning Point USA Action, the group's sister 501c4 organization, led Trump's 2024 campaign efforts in key battleground states and played a vital role in the election of the far-right candidates in Arizona, while TPUSA participated in advisory board of Project 2025, a blueprint for radically reshaping the federal government. All right, so that's a very quick summary. And I wanted to just point out, and I'm just throwing out the idea, is it possible that Tyler Robinson was radicalized by this type of rhetoric that we're seeing here? Is this what maybe changed Tyler Robinson? And of course, I really believe ultimately it was hate in Tyler Robinson's heart and the unregenerate nature of his soul that actually was the problem. But did this help spring? Was that the byproduct of that? What do you think? Over the last several years, the political right has increasingly shifted toward an authoritarian, patriarchal Christian supremacy dedicated to eroding the value of inclusive democracy and public institutions. The political right in the U.S., whose party infrastructure is dominated by the Republican Party, but includes the current Libertarian Party and is flanked to the right by the Constitution Party, has embraced aggressive state and federal power to enforce a social order rooted in white supremacy. Turning Point USA and its growing influence on conservative politics is emblematic of this current state. Every ill we are fighting right now in society has been brought forth by women. And that's Candace Owens said that. Isn't that wild? So let me I'm not going to read the whole article. I will leave it linked down in the description when the video goes public. So here's my thought. Is all of this a charade? Is all of this a canard where the Southern, even quoting Candace, I do believe in my soul that Candace is a part, because even in 2025, she was not a part of Turning Point. So why were they referencing Candace Owens in Turning Point when she's no longer a part of it and hadn't been a part of it for some time, almost 7 years at this point? Here's my theory. What if all of this was all a canard? This was all a show. This was all fake, because ultimately they wanted you not to think about the idea that Southern Poverty Law Center was infiltrating different groups, putting agitators in to infiltrate, or what they call field operatives, in to agitate various and sundry situations to stoke the fire that would ultimately radicalize somebody, black pill them, red pill them, whatever the term is this week. What if that was it? What if that was it? Because let's look at what Dave Rubin and them had to say about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA being on the Southern Poverty watch list. Let me pull this in. All right, let's pull this in. Greenheart's in the chat when you can hear.
Israel. And now, Kurt, you're a racist. Well, where's my money then? Where's this sweet cash for being things that I'm not, and that you aren't, and that Elizabeth isn't, and that none of us are? It's kind of offensive to me as a lawyer.
Elizabeth, let me throw to this video of our friend Charlie Kirk, who we just so desperately need these days and unfortunately don't have. This is May of 2025, talking about the SPLC.
They're literally putting high school chapters of ours on a hate group next to the KKK and next to neo-Nazi groups. And I mean, we can laugh this off. There's an element to this. Remember that there was a shooter that went to the Family Research Council years ago, inspired by the SPLC list. This is them trying to make us basically surrender at Turning Point USA. We're going to do the opposite, and our students are only going to lean in even more. But they can't debate us on our ideas. They cannot have dialogue. They cannot actually go onto the merits of why they are right or why we might be wrong. Instead, they must smear us with the age-old one-liner that you are a racist or that you are a hater. And they're finally realizing the power of Turning Point USA, which is why they put us on this list.
Well, when you're effective, you're a threat.
I mean, Elizabeth, it's kind of chilling when you watch that, thinking that the kid, Tyler Robinson, who killed Charlie, I don't know if he had a connection with the SPLC specifically, but he was ginned up into thinking that Charlie was all of these things that he wasn't, and then quite literally took his life because of it.
Right. I mean, most people in the last 10 years that have decided Donald Trump is Hitler and to hate all of us here right now really were riled up by the media. There's a lot of people that I blame every single day. I mean, you said it before you played the clip, Dave. Every day I realize more and more how much Charlie not only was needed, but would have been needed right now. In this moment, I am shocked actually by how smart he was. I knew when he was alive, but only now do I realize actually how brilliant he was, how he was the only person keeping us together, and how probably he was the only person that could have kept the young people as engaged as they were in 24 and as excited about the future and the values that he was so good at actually emulating in his day-to-day life, better than anyone else, I think, in our movement. I'm saddened that he's not here, but I hope people realize that his clips are around forever. And he warned us not only about this group, but about a lot of others. And I hope people never forget his words.
All right. Shout out. I love what she had to say. Shout out to this young lady. I'm only going to push back one little bit. Charlie Kirk was here for the time that Charlie Kirk was here. We still have Christ. As long as our king still rules and reigns, I'm not trying to sound crass. We don't need Charlie Kirk. We need the gospel. The more we push forward the gospel, the more we will deal with these issues. Because when you think about it, let's just think about it. How many of these people are looking at saying, this person is so bad, this person is so evil, this person is so wicked, because they have not looked at their own selves through the mirror of God's word and realized that I'm that wicked, I'm that evil. There's nobody who's ever existed in history that is more evil than me. period. And we need Christ. So I think that's the missing element. And that's where I think sometimes the conservative movement kind of slips out of range from the Christian ethic. So being a Christian, you almost are guaranteed to be conservative. Being a conservative does not mean that you're a Christian. And I think we have to make sure we keep that in line and say, hey, you might hold conservative values, might hold conservative viewpoints and ideologies, but that doesn't make you a Christian. And we see this all the time. Look at all the people who flipped. Go back and look at the whole list of people who have flipped from being quote unquote conservative to being whatever they are now today, post Charlie Kirk, and just look at where they were before when Charlie Kirk was alive. Candace, Nick Fuentes, Tucker, well, maybe even Tyler Robinson, even that's that, right? Megyn Kelly, fill in the blank, every last one of them. Look where they were before Charlie Kirk died, and now look where they are today. And ask yourself, were they more to the gospel? Were they tied down to the gospel? Were they founded and rooted in all their ideas, found themselves in reality of Christ? You tell me. All right, let's go and see this is a little longer segment. This is the Charlie Kirk program talking about the SPLC. And this is from like 6 months ago, right on the heels of Charlie Kirk passing away. Okay, right on the heels of it. So let's bring this in real quick. What's up, Andrew? What's up? I do want to meet Andrew.
Get to the SPLC is in the news. Breaking just moments ago, Kash Patel has officially severed ties between the FBI and the SPLC. It kind of had a vibe that he wasn't even aware that there was a tie until comments were floated on social media. I doubt it was impacting his job so much, but the fact that there was official tie was pretty offensive. So I want to welcome in the guy who wrote the book on the SPLC, and that is Tyler O'Neill. He's the senior editor at Daily Signal, and he also is the author of the book Making Hate Pay: The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center. So Tyler O'Neill, welcome to the show. Thank you for making the time. I've been seeing you all over social media trying to raise the alarm bells about the SPLC. And I got a lot of questions. Blake might chime in, Mikey might chime in, but I'm just going to start. Explain to me what inspired you to write the book in the first place, because you were ahead of the curve. And for those who are unaware of what the SPLC is, Tyler, tell us what it is and what it's become.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Let me just say it is an honor to be on the Charlie Kirk show. Seeing everything that Charlie did to champion free speech on our college campuses after it had been stifled for so long, and seeing him become the martyr to free speech that he was. I mean, it shook me to my core, but he has been such an inspiration, and it means the world to me to be here. So I just want to mention that.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, to answer your question, so the Southern Poverty Law Center, as the name suggests, it began as a public interest civil rights law firm that represented poor people in the South. And back in the day, it believed in representing everyone. So it actually had a reverse racism case representing white men who had been discriminated against in a majority Black employment opportunity. So, this was a noble organization. But the leader of that organization, the main fundraiser, Morris Dees, he started realizing that he could make the most amount of money by going after the Ku Klux Klan. And this is, let me be clear, the Klan is evil incarnate in my mind. I mean, they are the quintessential hate group in American history. And so every time that the SPLC sued a Klan group into bankruptcy, I think that's a win for America. But what we see in the 1980s is that this is the thing that got the SPLC attention and money. And we actually had the legal team at the SPLC quit en masse because they had signed up to work at the SPLC to represent poor people in the South, not to go hunting Klan groups. And all the lawsuits involving the Klan, they said, were like shooting fish in a barrel. They were also disturbed by the fact that the SPLC was starting to develop ties with law enforcement, that they were guiding law enforcement to find people who were, at the time, real racist threats. But eventually, the SPLC created those ties to law enforcement that would later become what we saw horrifically in the Biden years and even before that to some degree. So the SPLC around the year 2000 is when they start their third iteration. They had run out of clan groups. They ran out of grand dragons to conquer, and they started putting mainstream conservative and Christian organizations on their hate map with chapters of the Ku Klux Klan. And they say that this hate map shows the infrastructure upholding white supremacy in the United States of America. So make no mistake, if you are the Family Research Council, if you are Alliance Defending Freedom, if you are the Federation for American Immigration Reform, and they put you on that hate map, they are comparing you to the Klan, saying you are a violent force of hate that needs to be monitored by law enforcement, that needs to be cut off from polite society. And the SPLC takes this hate map, goes to big tech, goes to corporations, says, you need to use this to blacklist people, goes to the charitable sector, says, you need to blacklist people on this. So
I want to stop for a second. This guy is talking. Shout out to Tyler O'Neill. He is talking. So there's no checks and balances to the Southern Poly SPLC's list. If they decide to put you on the list, you're on the list, and you're in the sin bin because they put you there. So I guess basically they are judge, jury, and executioner to a degree. That's kind of crazy, man. There's no checks and balance, no way to say, hey, wait, hold on. You put, Grandma's Kitchen on here. You put Little Susie's Lemonade Stand on here as a hate group. Like, that's crazy work. I like how this book actually sounds interesting. He's doing a great job. Shout out to him.
One of the things that really drew my attention to the SPLC was in 2012 when a terrorist targeted the Family Research Council in Washington, D.C., their conservative Christian nonprofit. This guy showed up there. He used the SPLC hate map to find them. He had a semi-automatic pistol and a bag of Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And he told the FBI he planned to shoot everyone in the building and smear a Chick-fil-A sandwich in their faces. And the SPLC rightly, condemned the attack, but the SPLC hasn't taken the Family Research Council off their hate map. And if anything, the SPLC has gotten far worse. So, I mean, as you put up there on the screen rightly, the SPLC added Turning Point USA to the hate map earlier this year. And I was the first one to realize that and break the story on X.
I remember.
And on the Daily Signal. But, this is when they're putting the largest conservative grassroots youth organization on a map with chapters of the Klan. This is so far off the reservation. I mean, you can't make this up. And yet we saw just a couple months later, a man allegedly opening fire and murdering Charlie Kirk in cold blood. And we don't know if he was at all inspired by the SPLC, but it really looks like the SPLC's hate map is to some degree a kill list. And this is, this isn't the first time, this isn't even the second time the SPLC has been tied to political terrorism. It also happened in 2017 when that man opened fire, nearly killed Steve Scalise at the congressional baseball game practice. And he had liked the SPLC on Facebook. Now, every time this sort of thing happens, the SPLC says, we condemn political violence. We condemn political violence. I'm sorry. They need to put their money where their mouth is and have at least one modicum of actually doing something and taking Turning Point USA off the hate map. They need to scrap it entirely. But I've been asking directly, specifically, one specific ask, and they can't do that.
Well, no, I appreciate you keeping such a eye.
That was a run back. That was worth going back to listen to. Tyler O'Neill, shout out to him. That was informative. I have to say, that was very informative. I just want to know, like, how in the world are they able to just determine that somebody is a hate group on their own strength? Like, oh, we determine that this is a hate group. We determine that they need to be people non grata. We go to big tech, we go to banking, we go to this and say you need to blacklist this group. That's crazy. That is absolutely insane.
On this, you've been exceptional in your focus and in just holding them to account. But I think we need much more than just taking Turning Point off a list at this point. I completely agree. I posted last night on X that their hate list was really just a hit list, and Elon Musk, I guess, is quote tweeted it, which, you know, good for him. And he's been excellent on this, ADL and SPLC. And at some point, it stops mattering, Tyler, if, you know, these people were directly, you know, motivated by something they saw in the SPLC. It creates an ecosystem of political violence, a sheen of legitimacy to the political violence.
I think, you know, Tyler can explain this, but they basically run this like scare operation. You know, they'll send you a letter and they're like, the number of hate groups in America has grown by 50% in the last 2 years.
Hate is on the rise.
You know, and it's old. They could go after older liberals who are like terrified the Holocaust is going to happen again. It's like around every corner. And they just like whip them up into a frenzy to make money. But I think you can explain more, Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler, am I accurate in saying that they have just under $1 billion in reserves?
They have over $700 million in their endowment. They have millions of dollars in Cayman Island accounts offshore, which we still don't have an answer as to why a nonprofit has Cayman Island accounts. But yeah, I mean, essentially the business model is we position ourselves as the premier force monitoring and combating hate in America. And then we constantly go to our donors and say, look, hate is increasing. Here's why everyone to the right of Adolf Hitler, everyone to the right of Joseph Stalin is essentially Adolf Hitler. And so you have this situation where the SPLC puts you on this map that's not clear how you can ever get off of the map. And then they go to their donors.
It's a great
point. By
point.
the way, their donors are from the George McGovern campaign. So these are the donors, the Democrats who wanted things to be further left back in the 1970s. That's where the first big tranche of donors, or actually it was 68. 72. Sorry. The big tranche of donors is from there. And then it's all the people since then. And now they've positioned themselves. They're working very closely with, well, I mean, we don't have entire proof, but they have a lot of disturbing ties to Antifa and the people on the ground who have been engaging in these violent riots. And so what you have with the Southern Poverty Law Center is this interesting mix of these old liberals who kind of pass the torch to the new on the ground violent leftists.
Yep.
And they have been making the SPLC there's a big battle at the SPLC. Last year, they were accused of union busting. And to answer your original question, why I wrote the book was partially because of the FRC shooting, partially because in 2019, we had a racial discrimination and sexual harassment scandal where the founder of the SPLC, the co-founder, Morris Dees, was fired. The president resigned. It was a huge deal. Jocelyn Benson, by the way, the Secretary of State for Michigan, stepped down from the board at this time. Yes. And the SPLC went through this scandal. We saw a couple of reports in the legacy media, but mostly it was crickets. And then a couple months later, you had the new president of the SPLC coming out, comparing the SPLC to the Underground Railroad. And I said, no, we are not going to allow the SPLC to bury this scandal.
Yeah.
And I want.
Let me stop for a second. This is very good. Shout out to Carla, who is a subscriber who told me about this. I want to bring this up for you because this is their hate map. Okay. And I'm looking at Georgia specifically. This is wild. Okay, so apparently this is about where Atlanta is. There's 11 groups in this little, and I'm gonna drop the link. Let me put the link in here so you can look at this. This is crazy that they're able to just do this. Like This is, I mean, digital defamation, man. So some of the groups, we got the anti-immigrant group, anti-LB alphabet mafia. Look at all the anti-alphabet groups. There are 5 anti-alphabet groups. Anti-government in general, there's 7 of those, it looks like. No, it's more than that. Good gracious. Moms for Liberty. So every branch of Moms for Liberty is a hate group because they're against the government. And I don't know all that they're involved in, but wow. Tactical Civics is a hate group. Okay. This is absolutely bonkers, y'all. And I'm just scanning through, and you can find your state. Let me just get out of here. Reset the map. So look, this is the map, and then you can just find your state, like Texas. I'm trying to figure out what is all this over here. What's going on in New York and over there? That's crazy. Florida. Like, this is like, what kind of anti-groups y'all got in Illinois? Y'all need to stop. What do y'all have up here in North Dakota? Y'all got farmland. This is crazy. I kind of want to, I don't know. I might actually get off task and start looking. 24? What is 24? What? Again, Moms for Liberty. So every chapter, also they're kind of cheating. Literally, they're just putting every chapter of like Moms for Liberty is in this group. So if they mention, again, there's Broward County and Brevard County, Charlotte County, every one of them is listed as a, wow. And like they said, like, there's no way to get yourself off of this list. How do you get yourself off this list? I bet you if you're paying money, I bet you'll get off. I bet you that. Now I'm like even more interested. This is absolutely insane. But this is the group that was paying people to be agitators. What's the name of the book again? I'm sure they're gonna bring it up again. Here, so what you're saying to me is, Jason, get back on task. I like how you did that. All right, let's finish this up. Because I know it's gonna show up on here. Hold on a second. I lost the hold on 1 second. No, I got what you're saying. You're asking me, Jason, get back on task, my brother. Get back on task. I like that. I like how you did that, Natalie. I'm getting back on task. I promise. Here we go. Let's bring this back in. Let me see. I know it's going to show up right here. It's right. If they don't bring it up at the end, I'll go back over it again. I know they showed it at the beginning. When they get done, I'll pull it back up. Okay.
People to know how untrustworthy this group is.
Absolutely. Well, and this is what bothers me, Blake, is how they borrow from an actually noble past, and they keep donning the robes of an admirable generation gone by. And you could have disagreements even with that. I certainly do. But like, at least there was an acknowledgement that, hey, there was legitimately Klan members that were, hostile to blacks in the South. I mean, I'm sure there still are, but I mean, it was actually a thing that probably needed to be addressed, right? And the fact that they showed a little bit of impartiality, playing it both ways, shows that there was at least some good sense, some old school values that were in the organization. That is way gone. But what I'm curious about is, how do we actually go after this group with some teeth, right? They live in Alabama, or they're based in Alabama. It sounds like you just laid out a bunch of predicates for legitimate investigations, maybe by the Alabama Attorney General's office, or maybe but Harmeet Dillon needs to get involved. But also, they have ties to PayPal and other corporations. Am I right? So this is, we can't use like RICO, right? We went through that last night because, whether they're working with Antifa or not, one of the things that I've learned because of Blake is that the original RICO statutes were designed to go after the mafia. So there's not like inciting a riot is part of the statutes. And think about it in the context of SPLC. We can't get them on RICO charges, even if they are coordinating with.
We're mixing streams here, because the RICO stuff we've been talking about is the supporters of Antifa.
Well, I just want to know how you can actually get them.
Well, so the SPLC, I don't think the SPLC is as tied to the really bad Antifa stuff, because they're almost too much of a scam for that. Like, it's real left-wing organizations that are doing that, like, to get real gains. the SPLC is like this giant pile of Morris Dees's money that he built through like decades of all of this like scam stuff.
They did hire an Antifa an Antifa affiliated researcher.
I'm sure they have.
Yeah.
But what they also have is, I think the funniest thing you could go after them for is, and you can probably talk about this too. In 2019, Dees got forced out.
Yeah.
Because
sexual assault.
It was like implied sex stuff and then like racism stuff, which is even funnier.
Which is really funny.
Like it seems that he was basically bullying lower staff who were heavily non-white, and they were like, "This is a racist attack from Morris Dees," and they forced him out. They brought in Michelle Obama's chief of staff and said she is going to do a full investigation of everything that happened. No one has ever heard anything of this investigation since. Nothing has come of this. You have left-wingers writing articles where they say this organization is a con, it is a scam.
Yeah.
I think you can tell me here, Tyler, but I think there's enough where you just have to start poking at this and see if staff will talk about anything. And what's the money going towards? They turn about $30 million a year profit.
We have to wrap soon. So 1 minute, Tyler, the floor is yours to take us home.
Crazy.
Yeah, so one of the things when you're talking about RICO, Ted Cruz has a bill that would add rioting to the RICO statute. That's number one thing. Number two thing, there is the SPLC faces defamation lawsuits. There's a really strong case in Georgia by a group called the Dustin Inman Society that has been on the hate map, and they have this really solid, the SPLC is on record saying Dustin Inman Society is not a hate group, and then they add it to the hate map after they register a lobbyist to oppose a bill the Dustin Inman Society supported. I still think defamation is one of the strongest ways that we get the SPLC. But the other thing you can do is talk about how they're trying to blacklist people and going after them. And I think there might be a predicate there for some sort of interference with business practices sort of lawsuit too. I tend to look a lot at the lawsuit side, partially because I'm not quite as well versed in the criminal law, and I've been following the defamation lawsuits against the SPLC for a long time. I want a good, strong defamation lawsuit to hold the SPLC accountable for consistently dragging people's names through the mud. And if there ever was a case to overturn New York Times v. Sullivan, I think the SPLC's shenanigans is the best example.
Well, I hope that's not a glass half full view, because Times v. Sullivan has been a thorn in a lot of people's sides for a long time. Anyways, this is Tyler O'Neill, senior editor of the Daily Signal and author of Making Hate Pay: The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Okay. Thank you so much, Tyler. We'll have you on again soon as this story continues to evolve. Thank you.
Thanks again for having me.
Shout out. And I'll make sure I put that link down in the description as well. I did put the link right here. If you want to go get it, grab it real quick off of Amazon or whatever. It looks really interesting. Here is the Daily Signal, which is Tyler's blog and website. Looks like a lot of good articles there as well. So y'all check this out, man. This is very interesting. And so I started this off. One, I wanted to just pose an idea to you all. What if the Southern Poverty Law Center, there is a college here, used to be a college here in Atlanta called Southern Polytech. And that's every time I want to say it, I get started with Southern Poly, and I meant to say Southern Poverty Law Center actually radicalized Tyler Robinson, causing, to a degree, the death of Charlie Kirk. What about it? What do you think? So that was my thought. I wanted to show you the article. I'm going to leave that article in the description as well. And I'll make sure it's available to you all. And then, of course, the two videos that we watch with, they're putting high schoolers on the list, and there's no checks or balances. There's no way of determining that your group is or isn't. There's no objective group that will also say, yes, we agree that this is there's no way of guaranteeing that the groups that are on this quote unquote hate map or heat map, whatever it's called, are actually bad people. There's no way. That's crazy work. But thank y'all so much for tapping in. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for being members of the channel. I greatly appreciate it. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, all that kind of good jazz. and being supportive of the channel. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Jay Witt Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor and hit me up with that 3-piece special. Like the video, subscribe, and of course, share it with somebody who would also enjoy this type of content. And make sure you leave a comment, because I do pin the best comments to the top. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.